afternoon, everyone, and welcome to All Things Grace Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Majors, and today we're talking about not just surviving, but thriving. And my guest knows a lot about that. So Savio Clemente is a stage three cancer survivor. So he knows a lot about this idea of transforming from the inside and out. So battling cancer ignited a fire with him, okay? So this journey not only shaped his character, but laid the foundation for a new mission for him, right? About empowering cancer survivors and leaders now, cancer survivors and ambitious leaders to amplify their voice and forge a truly healthy, wealthy, and wise lifestyle. So fast forward, here we are. You are now a TEDx speaker, a media journalist. I'm going to get all the juice on this. Media journalist, board certified wellness coach, best-selling author, podcaster, and sought after speaker. And as you'll find out, so much more. So thank you. Thank you for being here with me today. I really appreciate it, Savio.
Michelle, thank you for having me. I'm excited to dig in right here.
Yeah. So I think what I want to do is I just want to just start out with your journey. We're going to hear all your background stuff. I did some high level, but we're going to hear so much more. So I just kind of want to start out with your journey, right? So, and I had so many notes. So if I'm looking this way, it's because I have furious amounts of notes here. Not furious. I'm trying to get away from violent language. I have a copious amount of notes here. And so, I want to say, like, having journeyed along someone in their cancer journey, and it does a number on your mind, body, and soul without question. So I want you to kind of take us through what was life like when you found out, when you got your diagnosis? What was the experience like? And I'm always curious about what was that moment where you said, I'm going to turn this into a blessing for others. I am going to use this for something bigger than myself. So however you can get to those three, go for it.
Sure. So a little bit of background information. So I graduated with an IT background, computer science. I did a lot of .coms, worked in a lot of think tanks and ideation. I was good at it, but I don't think I really loved it. And then I teamed up with a bunch of people. We started a production company. Let's just say I invested a lot of my time, energy, and money into it, and it just didn't work out. And it was around the time when cancer came, which was July of 2014, when truthfully, Michelle, I just didn't have the courage or the wherewithal to just tell them it wasn't working, because it wasn't working for them and it wasn't working for me. And I think that was I think that lit the match, so to speak, in terms of the universe, God, whatever you call it, trying to get me to understand something different. And so the way cancer showed up in my life is I was traveling with a friend. We went to Amsterdam, Paris, and London, and I kept having these drenching night sweats at the different locations we were in. And I'm like, that's weird. I'm like, maybe it's the food, maybe it's the environment, maybe it's just me. Came back from the trip, and at night, drenching night sweats. I was like, what's happening? All of a sudden, my stomach started getting distended, bigger and bigger. Okay. So at this point in my life, I was seeing a naturopath yearly. A naturopath is just someone who analyzed my blood type, told me what vitamins to take, what diet structure to have. And I saw him consistently for about 8-9 years. And he looked at my blood work. He's like, Savio, there's like 3 or 4 different things that I could say is happening here, but I really think you need to go seek out mainstream medicine and see what this is. Up until this point, Michelle, I was not someone who even took aspirin, to be honest with you. I was eating organic food, working out 6 days a week, boxing, spinning, strength training, getting my protein in. I was doing all the physically right things to do. And so I went to go get a sonogram at his request. They wouldn't let me leave the office for 1 hour. Actually, an hour and a half. They finally came out and they're like, we need you to get a relative to come pick you up. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I have a car. They're like, no, we need you to get a relative to come pick you up and take you to the hospital. I'm like, what? And they're like, yes. So my dad ended up coming. He took me to the hospital, and literally within an hour, I was admitted to the 5th floor. And that night, I heard nurses whispering that I would be transferred to the 7th floor, which they call the cancer floor. And that was a big gulp in my throat. And I can talk to you more about that in detail, but that was the first time that I knew that I had cancer.
Okay. So you get this diagnosis. I see the reflection in my screen. I'm sorry, that's distracting me. That's why you don't have your own camera on. You're looking at yourself because I'm like, that's bothering me now. So you get this diagnosis, and then this sets off, like, of course, just talk about how just one words can change your life. Just one word, diagnosis or cancer. I know that was a game changer. So what was the next months or weeks or year, what was the process like?
Yeah. So that day they transferred me to the seventh floor. I ended up getting a nephrostomy tube, which they had to distend about 8 liters of fluid from my abdomen. So I was bedridden for about a week. The one of the doctors was in my year. It was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He called it DLBCL, which is diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. So it was a blood cancer. And they actually said to me, which was really strange and crazy, that if I was to get a cancer, this is the cancer to get, because they're like, we have the medicines to get you healthy and whole again. And I'm like, okay, thank you for the information. So after a week of being bedridden with the nephrostomy tube, I was in the hospital for another 8 days. And the medical director came to me and she said, Savio, we know your history. By the way, I had amazing care. I counted probably like 19 doctors were seeing me consistent basis. I don't know what I deserve to have that level of care, but I did. And she said, if you don't get your first round of chemo before you leave this hospital, I don't know what's going to happen to you. I'm like, seriously? She said, yes. So, Michelle, I relied on what I do best, which is see a problem, go inward, and try to figure out the mess. And so I was accommodating to everyone who was giving me care because I'm like, I'm not making their job harder than it is. I was armed with Wi-Fi and my smartphone, and I was armed with this ability for myself because I saw my physical body dying, right? Stage 3. But I
Mm,
saw like so many other elements of my being, like my emotional resonance was still there. My spirituality was still there. I was still vibrant in my mind because I kept researching. I even created a Google alert on my disease to find out what I needed to do, or what stories I would learn, or what research is out there, what case studies is out there. So I knew that was fact. Those were things were alive. And I'm like, I gotta find a way to pull those other levers out of me.
that's
And
right.
that was really the impetus of my TEDx talk, which is about the stranger, because I saw my physical body as the one dying. And I was like objective enough to realize, no, I'm a lot more. I'm still alive in these other areas of my
Mm,
life.
mm,
And so, uh, what really a revelation came to me, it was this movie back, and I talk about it in my TEDx talk in the 90s, where Keanu Reeves plays Siddhartha. He plays a young Buddha in the movie, and he's there meditating. He's given up all his wealth, all his riches. He's meditating. He's probably eating like 1 grain of rice per day or per week. And all of a sudden, while meditating, he hears two individuals on a fishing boat, an older one and a younger one. And the older one goes to the younger one, and they have an instrument. If you hold the string too tight, it will snap. And if you leave it too slack, it won't play. The path is the middle way. And I'm like, it was like a light bulb hit me. I'm like, oh, I can do chemo, but I can also do these other integrated modalities. And so
mhm.
that's what I ended up doing.
Wow. So, we're going to talk about the inner stranger. I want to know more about the book. We're going to talk about that. So now you're in this process and you've made some internal decisions now,
I have.
right? You've made some internal decisions about how this is going to look. And I think one of the things that just as humans, we're so reactive. Life is happening and it's happening to me. And that we don't think to say, I get to control this narrative. The
Always.
circumstances I may not be able to control, but I get to choose the meaning that this is in my life. And my deepest truth, my truth, is that the meaning is where the pain lives or the joy lives, the healing lives or the suffering lives, right? And so taking control and saying, I get to say what the meaning of this is, puts you back in some place of power where you can now, you have a hand in how things, turn out. So you've taken control. You said, this is what this means. And then you go through the process. Obviously, you're here today. God bless us all for that. And what was the moment when you said, not only this is what it means, but this is what it means for my life, the bigger picture, the bigger journey that I'm here to travel.
Yeah. I made a conscious decision to treat the cancer as my sole mission, laser focused on healing. I let everyone go. I said, I love you, but I can't be involved in anything. I let my work go. I spent whatever I needed to for the integrative modalities because those are not covered by insurance.
That's
They are
right.
something that you have to invest in. But I'm like, what's the point of saving if I'm dead? There's no point in doing any of that. So, and my sister from California, I have two sisters, was like, oh, let's tell everybody, they can pray on you. And I'm like, listen, I love this idea that you care enough to do that, but this is my challenge, right? The doctors can help me in one aspect of life, which is the physical stuff. They don't
Mm,
control how those medicines are, what they're going to do to me. They don't. They can just
mm,
administer them, check on them, evaluate them, find new information. The rest of it is my job. It's an inside job. It's not an outside one. And so it took me a long time. It took me 5 years for me to make the decision that I was going to take the pain and make it into a purpose, to take
mm,
it and make it into a mission. And I waited 5 years because they tell everyone 5 years in remission is not a guarantee, but it's less likely to occur. As of
mm,
December of 2023, a couple of months ago, I am 9 years in remission. So the way my story goes is I was diagnosed in July of 2014. I did 6 rounds of chemo every 3 weeks. The first round was in the hospital. The other 5 rounds were in a chemo bed, 5 to 6 hours per session. And in between those 3 weeks, I did literally high and low. I looked everywhere and I tried everything. I literally, a friend of mine in college used to say that his mom used to cook all in the kitchen soup, where she would put everything in the kitchen
everything that was in
in the soup. And
there.
that's what I did because I'm like, I believe in body autonomy. And I'm like, I need to do what I need to do to find where healing is, because healing doesn't always occur in the doctor's office. Healing doesn't always occur in a hospital bed. Healing doesn't always occur in a chemo bed. It occurs in all ways and all means. And I'm looking to figure out what that is. So then after doing those 6 rounds plus integrated modalities, 4.5 months later in December, 5 days before Christmas, I was told I was in remission. So I
Mm,
celebrated my 9 years just a few
ah,
days.
awesome. I love that.
Mhm.
So I have 8 questions in my head. Let me figure out my process here. So there was a moment in your journey, I'm sure, where, well, no, I'm not sure. I'm assuming that you were in a lot of pain, right? I know chemo, just remembering, what I witnessed firsthand, where it's probably some pretty intense pain and discomfort. And when you were at your low, 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 were you still like, I'm gonna make this mean, or did you still have a certain level of energy to lift you up? Or were you just saying, today, I'm just going to get out of bed and that is my win? Or whatever it is. How, when you hit those really intense moments, what was your go-to?
Yeah. So I grew up Catholic, so I have a strong faith, but I'm also someone who also explored various belief systems. So I call myself just spiritually open, generally in general, because I believe truth is everywhere and belief is everywhere. We need to find out what resonates with us. So I had that strong guttural um, structure in me.
Mhm, mhm.
And I honestly will say the integrated modalities, I think, staved off a lot of the negative side effects. Yes, I lost my hair. Now I wear it as a badge of courage, and people tell me it looks great. And it saves me loads of time, to be honest with you. So I'm happy with it. I had a little bit of neuropathy, but I still had a great appetite. When I got out of the hospital, I lost 12 pounds. My mom looked at me. She's like, oh, no, 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 no. She's like, we're going to get you back up there. I'm like, okay, Mom, you start doing your thing. And so she did. I did have lethargy a little bit, but I think that those integrated modalities help balance that out. I was still working out, by the way. I lost eyebrows. I was looking like a crazy person, but I was still getting my strength training in. I was still getting my
Wow.
spinning in. Yeah, I was still doing it. I didn't really have any vomiting or anything. I wasn't really nauseous. So I think just my will and desire, and also because what I ended up doing back then was for me, was reframing this idea that chemo was bad. I reframed it as an elixir, something to get me to where I need to go, an additive, something that's beautiful, something that's, so I turned that idea into 5 to 6 hours as a way to sleep, as a way to meditate, as a way to relax, I did that on purpose. Although I will say, One of them was called vincristine. It was this red gelatinous, disgusting looking thing. And I looked at the nurse and I'm like, that's going in me. And she's like, yeah, that's going in you. I'm like, okay. So I accepted it. I'm like, okay, get in me. So I think those were the decision points that I make. Now I'm speaking about my cancer life and my cancer situation. Mine was a blood cancer. After interviewing 200 cancer survivors for both my interview series and my book, I know it's not easy at all. You lose breasts, you lose your throat, you lose a colon, you lose body parts that you can't pretend is no longer, it's not there anymore. So you have to
Yeah.
come to a semblance of how do I make myself whole again? How do I make myself me again? And that's the hard part about the process. So I'm speaking from and I tell people all the time, my blood cancer, you can't see my scars. They're invisible scars. As a matter
Yeah.
of fact, I didn't even need a port. They told me my veins were so good, not good anymore, that they gave me, yeah, that's how they administered they're like, you're like a rarity because usually we give people a port and there's a scar. I had none of that. So I feel grateful, but I also know that this is a responsibility. And that's why I made, after 5 years, that this was going to be a mission of mine. Because I'm
Yes.
like, this happened to me. I have two choices. I can pretend it didn't happen, which I don't do. Or second is I can actually take it and make something beautiful out of it and try to help people along the way. And that's what I've chosen to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. My the friend I was mentioning was also blood cancer, and it was really, really interesting. Some of the things that we bumped up against. Like trying to find a donor, had a twin brother, and he wasn't a match. And then went back, and they called and said, "Hey, we found a donor for you." We were like, "Yay, yay, yay!" Only to find out that the donor they found was her 20 years ago donating blood,
Oh
and
my
it was her,
God.
right?
Oh
That was
my
that was the only match and so it's really a journey, but it's so the self-discovery that goes along with it and how you think about life. Like now, her level of I don't care. And she does. She's one of the most caring and loving and focused people. And she's very good at like going, this is not a big deal. And so the things that we normally stressed about, she doesn't anymore. So there is that piece too. It changes how you move forward and what you value and what's important. But I want to go back to something you said that was so, so good. And it was like you were in this situation where you weren't happy there. You weren't happy. And I really love that you said, expressed, I did not have, I couldn't, the truth or the courage to walk away. I would be curious to know how many people listening to this. I'd probably say 95% of us are in some situation I am right now, where there's that truth and courage to walk away. And it's not, it's a business partnership, but it's a lot about me knowing in my bones, this is not right. And I'm always feeling like I have to contort, adjust, suppress what I'm thinking, and go along with it and all of that, only to go through this process where you come out on the other end and you're like, look, I'm leaving y'all. I'm done. You had the truth through this adversity, the truth and the courage to then say, yeah, I'm done, right? Because there's a deeper thing moving. And I just want to say, we don't have to go through cancer to get to a point where we say, I'm not going to do this because I don't want to, because I don't feel good. And that's enough. But that's not enough, it seems like. It's not enough just because I don't want to. I told a client that, I said something to him that I was going to do, and they're like, well, you're on sabbatical or you're taking a break. Like, are you going to hate that you're working with us? And I said, because I want to, because I want to. And I want to. And then I thought to myself, I want to move through life more just saying, because I don't want to. That's enough. Or because I want to. That's enough. Right. And so, um, and in addition to, well, can you say a little bit about that? Let's first, I just want to hear your thoughts on that truth and courage piece and how much of that um drove you before this big experience.
Yeah. So a little bit of background, that business relationship was also a friendship with three other individuals for about 15 years. I
Yes.
invested a lot of not only time, energy, but money. And
Mhm.
I don't speak a lot about it, but I can speak overview aspect of it. It was a mission. I mean, I was called and I felt like there was a mission, that particular project. It wasn't working for them in terms of their own personal lives, and it wasn't working for me. And I'm an embodiment coach as well. So I talk about how the body resonates and gives you messages. And it took me 5 years to get to the point of understanding what just happened to me, like what just literally happened to me in terms of my cancer, that I realized that a large part of our courage in general as humans lies in our stomach. And where was my cancer? In my stomach. It's that idea of the gut, the intuition that's speaking louder than what our heads are saying. And so for me, I think, the way it ended was actually their decision, but I felt liberated actually when it happened.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I also felt that maybe there was just a different path I needed to walk from
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
But I thank all the experiences for it. And I can never, because a large portion of when you have cancer, everyone's an expert now. Everybody's got their expert ideas and they're like, what's the cause of the effect? And, all the like spiritually focused individuals, like it's that karmic and all. You know what? Whether it is or whether it isn't, Michelle, I was more interested in is your response to anything in life is about what are you going to do next?
Hmm.
And when the doctors gave me the bone marrow aspiration, they kept telling me, Savio, just to let you know, people have kicked and screamed, they've spat on us, they've yelled expletives at us. So we're prepared. There's two of them. I was sweating profusely, but I just let it happen. And they looked at me, they're like, wait, we've done this unfortunately, hundreds of times. You just took it like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm not making your life harder. You're here to help and heal me, right? So I just got to toughen up and do what I need to do to get through it so that you can get more informed as to what your next steps are as well. And that just brings me to my central point. It's about our response to everything. It's about our objectivity to everything. It's about our semblance of understanding to everything. And I think a large portion of people, including my former self, sometimes in life, and Oprah said it best, and I can never say it better than her, life sends you a pebble, then you sends you a rock, and then it sends you a boulder.
Yeah, that's right.
And this was my boulder moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So the moral of the story is pay attention to the rocks and actually honor them. Honor and a lot of times we know things, so we'll see the rock and go, oof, yeah, that's God telling me I need to, right? And that's all we do with it. And and I just think that we're more conditioned just to react than to create, right? And so what I hear so much of this whole 29 minutes we've been talking is you move in a spirit of creation, right? And then not like reacting and letting life happen to you. It happens for you. And it started when you felt like I don't want to be in this group anymore. I do believe that to some degree our issues become our tissues, right? So
Oh,
whatever it is that we're manifest, it goes somewhere. We think we're ignoring it consciously, but it goes somewhere. With that said, now I got to pivot to The Inner Stranger. Tell me about this book.
sure. So the book came out of interviewing 200 cancer survivors. So I'm a journalist. I pitched the idea of speaking to my people, my community. And he's like, oh, interesting. He thought of a great title. I survived cancer, and here is how I did it. At the point when the book came out, I basically took 35 of the interviews, told my own story as well. And fortunately for me, I woke up the next day on my birthday, and the book promotions team told me it was a bestseller in 4 categories, which to me really, really, really just means that the idea of hope translated somehow in some way. And that was fantastic. But I also knew in 2023, last year, I woke up and I'm like, what's something that I'm really fearful of? Because I really believe that the answer is in the discomfort. It's through the discomfort, not around the discomfort, not over the discomfort, like
Right.
through it. And
Mhm.
my friend Sterling is the one who really hones in on this idea of it. And I have to wholeheartedly agree with it. And so for me, I said, what's scaring me? Public speaking. Now people are like, what are you talking about? You like speak on panels, you're like doing podcasts. And I'm like, yeah, but there's a different animal when you're standing up on stage a crowd of people you don't know, speaking to
Yeah.
at that point hundreds of people, and I'm like, I want to tackle this. So I ended up doing a TEDx talk. So it's called 7 Minutes to Wellness: How to Love Your Inner Stranger. I did it in October last year in Raleigh, North Carolina. It actually came out at the end of December, but I was in India. So I do a lot of projects for National Geographic. So I was in India for 15 days for them, doing 8 cities, just experiencing India. And it came out, I'm like, I'm not in the headspace for this. And so I ended up promoting it in the first week of January. It's doing really well. But the idea germinated from that hospital experience almost 9 years ago. This idea that the stranger was this Savio that was dying, that I could not see past. The stranger for me was really the shame. I felt so much shame, Michelle. Like, in fact, I
Mm,
felt like I was disappointing myself, disappointing people that who had
wow.
poured into me, disappointing. And even my sister's like, let's get people to see you. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be a zoo animal. It was just vulnerability and shame. And Brene Brown would have a field day about that whole experience. And
Mhm.
so that's the stranger for me. But I left that theme vague on purpose because people have told me the stranger is the person I can't see. The stranger is the person that I don't know. The stranger is the person that I know is there, but I can't have and reach their arm. And I made it on purpose because I want people to go inside. It's always an
Mhm.
inside job, like I mentioned before. And so for me, I really felt that if I don't tell my story on that stage, then
Mhm.
who's going to? If I don't face my fear, then no one else is going to be able to face their own personal fears.
Mhm. So now that makes me think about the stranger as a person within us that, and this is so deep. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm an introvert. I need to process. So sometimes I stumble on these kind of questions, especially when they strike a place in me that is beyond words. Um, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think that inner stranger is the person that we don't know how to reconcile with, right? And I don't know, and it could be that person side that is like, are you trying to take my life and in this with through this disease? Or that stranger can be, you don't deserve wealth. You don't deserve abundance. So there's something, that thing that's in us that we're wrestling with, and we don't know what angle to come at to, we're wrestling with it, right? And that's the first thing I thought of when I saw the title, and now I'm hearing you, is that place, like, who is that? What is that inner place where we feel defeated and we don't know how to slay this giant?
I love the way you articulated it because I often clarify people. The inner stranger is not the inner critic. It's not the one that's banging, banging, banging at you. It's someone or something within you that
Mhm.
you have to figure out is a friend, a foe, an enemy, but you can also transform it because any stranger can become a friend and actually could become your best friend. So it's
Yeah.
about marrying that idea and that concept. And I
Yeah.
left it vague on purpose because I really want people to wrestle with it. I have an acronym, as you know, in the talk called Aloha in order to do that. But I really want people to really figure out for themselves because everyone's looking at the external, right? We're flipping through social media. We're looking at our neighbors. We're reading the news. We're seeing all these bombastic things happening in and around us. But at the end of the day, what's happening within yourself there, mentally, emotionally, physically, in your dreams, in your relationships? What's in your relationship to God, in your relationship to something greater than yourself? What's happening there? Yeah.
Well, I want to go back to something you said that stood out. I typed just the words embodiment coach. We've touched a little bit on how the body will talk to us. It talks to us through a lot of different ways. Um, can you give your thoughts and give some more, add some depth to this idea of an embodiment coach and what you're trying to get people to see, to understand, to be able to use as a resource?
Yeah. So there's some context to it. There's people who do somatic coaching. Soma is the body. Gestalt therapy, using the body as a resource because there's anecdotal evidence that there are aspects of our bodies and ourselves that resonate. There's a consciousness there, right? Even though it's not fully fleshed out, there is. And so I coined this idea of using the three brains, the head, heart, and the gut, to resonate and to feel into what that is. So that could be as easy as, if we have a problem that you're facing, where is it in your body that's striking you the most?
Mm.
In where it strikes you, what are you sensing, feeling, experiencing? In the aspect of that sensing and feeling, what are you now seeing as a block or a barrier, as something to get through, something to get over or past or under or over? And then from there, we figure out, how does that lay the groundwork
Mhm.
for really getting rid of that particular obstacle, block, pattern shifting. People call it shadow work,
Mhm.
whatever it is. Let's make it simple, guys. It's a problem. and,
Yeah.
and we're trying to get to a solution there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna use this as, I'm just gonna take a random subject. And then if you can give some thoughts of how you would apply these principles. So someone comes to you and says, look, I've tried everything, well, not now, Ozempic, that's the newest thing that people are taking, but I've tried everything to lose weight, and I want to do it in a way where I'm dealing with the issue and I want to be done with it. I want to move on and be healthy and experience my life in a different body. What are some of the things that you would say, given even as an embodiment coach, or just this experience around your inner self? What is, oh gosh, I send my notes here. Your inner stranger, anything we've talked about, where would you take a person on that journey?
Well, clients have come to me because my niche is the cancer survivor journey, right? And when you go through treatment, you finish treatment, it does a toll on your body. And then you have this weight issue, or some people have this weight issue. So I would first really say to them, let's do a body scan. Let's just breathe into the different body parts, that I mentioned. And let's figure out for yourself where the germinating aspect of your body and your view of the body lies, right? So
Mhm.
I have to make it very clear. People think coaching is therapy. It's not. I'm not a therapist. I know my lane. My lane is coaching. Coaching is where you are, where you need to go. But obviously, our past informs our present and
Sure.
definitely informs our future. Then I would actually say to them, it's a classic coaching technique. If I had a magic wand and took away this weight issue or problem, what is it in your life that you could do, accomplish, be,
Mhm.
exhibit, have people see, have people
Mhm.
be? And that informs a decision as to what really might be the internal block that's not allowing you to figure out what the external block is. Then
Mhm.
obviously there's tools and resources, journaling, there's breathing, meditation. But those I find, for people who don't know what those things are, they're just easy fixes. For people who really understand, it's a process to go through those things. So I never just say to them, just meditate, because they're like, what are you talking about? Like, you mean like in lotus position? I'm like, if that works for you, if that doesn't, they're like, I don't understand. I'm like, okay, let's make it simple. Just give me a list every day, 5 things that you are worried about when it comes to this issue. And then we see where the data takes us, and we see where your feelings takes us. And so I like to do that inner work. I mean, my program is called the Accelerated Path for a reason. I want to accelerate you so that you can be the best version of yourself. That's cliched, but it really is, because I often tell people, just because you survive cancer doesn't mean you won the game. You still have to go through the hard work of that internal, mental, emotional unraveling. And it's really hard. And then my job as a journalist is, I'm like, okay, now that we did all this work, how do you want to tell your story? How do you want to amplify your impact? How do you want to help another person be less burdened with what you went through?
Yeah. So I love your energy. And I know one thing about me is that I'm an energy person. I feed off of energy. Now, while I'm an introvert, that's probably why I have to be an introvert, because after this, I got to take a nap, because I'm so like, oh, and I like it to like going up a roller coaster, and you get to the very top right before you're going to do and you're there, and then you just stay there all the time. Your energy is just like, at some point you have to go, okay. And so I really, really love your energy. I want to ask you a question. I've never asked this question before, but whatever is calling me to ask it, I'm going with it. On a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being, man, this life was messed up. I want to scrap it and get a do-over in another lifetime. And 10 is, I cannot imagine a more amazing life to live in. Okay, 1 and 10. What would you give yourself today? And if it's not a 10, do you know, and you can share or not, do you know what would make it a 10?
I would say it's a 9.5.
Oh,
It is, and I'm saying that truthfully. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a hard grader. Okay. It could have been a 7, but
just
it's a it's a
because,
it's a
right?
9.5. And the only reason why I deducted the point 0.5 is that I feel to a large degree, I think when you think to yourself, I think generally even the listeners right now thinking, was it all worth it? Was everything that I went through in my life as a child, as a young adult, as an adult, whatever you've been through, trauma, drama, at the end of the day, we all know this world we live in is a world of problems. It just is. We can pretend that it is a world of problems. No matter if you're wealthy, famous. Listen, I covered the red carpet and I talked about in my newsletter 2 weeks ago, did I belong on a sea of Hollywood's elite? Do I
Yeah,
actually belong there? Even though I was invited, I'm
yeah,
credentialed, do I belong there? And so I would say the point 0.5 really is a part of me is just I'm also an introvert, but I often say to people, I'll be an extrovert if you pay me. If I could need to go to work, I'll do it, But
yeah. I
the,
love
the,
that.
the point 0.5 is the curiosity. It's like, I want to
Mm,
see what else is in store for me, right? I built this particular aspect of my life and my career based upon something that I would have never wished upon myself at
yeah,
all. I tell people all the time, I'm a coach you don't want to have, but if you do have cancer and you did survive it, then I'm the guy for you.
yeah.
So I would say point 0.5, just because I feel like I have a lot more to do.
So that's really interesting to me because that 0.5 is a self-determined 0.5. It's almost like I'm leaving 5% open to let God do, to see what the surprises that are coming my way, or
Yeah.
to live in the curiosity, or to, right? I'm like, sounds like a 10 to me because even when the 5 is a self-created 5%, then that's still the fullness of that's part of you and what you are declaring and what you are creating, right? And so I think that's amazing. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Coming from a New Yorker too. Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
And at the end of the day, I can't say this avenue is open up. Look, Michelle, I've interviewed people like Venus Williams, Ice-T, Deborah Messing, Carson Kressley. I
Yeah,
just covered the Oscars. I took trips to Italy and India where they flew me. I do work for National Geographic. I do coaching and help cancer survivors amplify their impact. I have a podcast. I did a TEDx talk that at this point has gotten close to 60,000 views only 2 months in. I've written a best-selling book. I can't complain. Like even the
yeah,
pain and like I started off as a child with a stuttering impediment. I had a friend who had a massive stuttering impediment. And I think being a sensitive person, I think I took on some of his characteristics because the doctor asked my dad, he's like, I don't see anything functionally wrong with your son. Of course, this was the 80s. So,
yeah,
people weren't on point, but, and
yeah.
and then I had, a little bit of social anxiety when I was in high school. And so even though all those things happened to me and cancer happened to me and, you know, the dot-com crash as a young 20-year-old being laid off and going through 9/11 as a New Yorker and all those things, right, happened to you. At the end of the day, it's been a beautiful life if I reflect on it, even through all the pain and all the sorrow. And I just tell people listening that I do once a year, a good friend mentioned this idea of compiling a list of all your wins at the end of the year.
Mm,
And
mm,
I'm telling you, I did this exercise and I was shocked. I had 51 wins in 2023. 51,
mm.
because we all look at the stuff that didn't work out. We
Yep.
all look at the stuff that was horrible or that was painful. So it's still a point 0.5 because that's the way I roll.
Love it. Choice. Love it. Love it. Love it. And I want to you made the comment, let me see where my notes are. You made the comment that it's an inside job, right? It's all about what's going on the inside. But then what I just said, now it's all about choice. And so I want to, as we wrap up here, I just want you to say a little bit to folks who are listening that are feeling like, good for you, man. That's awesome. I mean, I'm sorry about your cancer,
Yep.
but I mean, come on, red carpet traveling, like it's easy to say, oh, I just have, I just have these, but not really realizing that these ways of thinking and being that seem a little bit like woo woo kind of got you here, or a huge part, instrumental in where you are. But this idea of choice, if you can leave us off with something related to our ability to choose our destiny, choose our story, I'll stop there, go.
So I think it really boils down to, and I feel, besides thinking, I feel that it boils down to this idea of attitude.
Mm,
A large portion of the healing that I went through, I had 4 roommates. 2 of them had brain cancer. One of
mm,
them wanted to leave the hospital, was yelling and screaming at the nurses and doctors to get them out of the hospital. And I turned to him and I said to him, I know I don't know you. Like, you're here to get healing, right? He's like, why do you want it? Because actually wanted to leave the hospital. He had a radiation scheduled the next morning. He's like, my dog's there. And so I talked to a friend later that night. She's like, Savio, you don't get it. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, you have a different attitude than
mm,
he does. He's thinking he's going to die. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. Like, I am just different in that sense. But when you face upon your mortality and you think, I'm going to die in a hospital, I don't want to do this. I really say that point because, look, things happen to us. It's horrible what can happen to us in any given life. But at the end of the day, we get to choose a story. We get to choose our response to it. We get to control our mental and our emotional. And if we can't control it, we have tools and resources to try to control those things. We get to control our daily schedule to some degree, even though some of us live hectic work lives. And that's why my talk is called 7 Minutes to Wellness. All you need is 7 minutes. And it's an acronym born out of one of the healing modalities that I did, which is called Huna healing. It's a Hawaiian healing modality, and it's called Ho'oponopono. And I just made an acronym called Aloha, which is A stands for acknowledgement. Acknowledge the present moment and where you are. L is for listen to that inner voice within you. O, and the most important, is open yourself up to self-compassion and self-forgiveness. Because
mm.
out of all the 200 cancer survivors I talked to, most of the through line was all about that, forgiving themselves and other people and having compassion for where they are. H is harness that wisdom and be kind to yourself. And A, act on that purpose. Every day have intention to just do the best you can. So if people can actually incorporate that acronym in their life, 7 minutes a day, I think it could transform your ability to see, your ability to feel, and most importantly, which COVID stole from a lot of us, is our connection to other people.
Woo! That's right. That's right. Wow. This feels like a part one. Savio, you got to come back. I mean, come on. I got like look at my list here. Okay. I have a lot, I love it when I walk away and say, "Ooh, I got a lot of work to do." And not in this, no, I have a lot of work I can do, right? There's so many tools. That Aloha thing alone, I'm gonna listen to this again. Um, 7 minutes. That's all. I can't even tell you what's going rest, as Oprah would say, the bing bing bingers, the binging on the top of the hairs, right? Or binging.
You're glad I didn't do the woo-woo cry, okay? You're glad I didn't do the woo-woo cry, okay? Because a
The
large
ugly cry.
portion of the time when I talk to people, they're like, you talk about these feelings and sensations and use simple words. I'm like, you want me to go science on you? You want me to talk about self-regulation theory and positive
Oh,
psychology? I can talk to you about social support there. I can talk to you about all that stuff. But does that really mean anything to you? No.
yeah, yeah.
What means something to you is what someone brilliantly said one day. It's not about what you tell people. It's how you make them feel.
That's
Because
right.
we
That's
feel
right.
and act on the feeling. We buy through feeling. We connect through feeling. We
Yes.
see through feeling. And most
Yes.
importantly, as a whole, like, people tell me all the time, like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? You know what? Think about it, Michelle. think about the awesomeness of this. What's the purpose of all of us collectively on this giant rock in space? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
unimaginable. So
Yeah.
what is our connection, collective connection to each other? It's got to be
Mhm.
better than what we're doing now, because what we're doing now, it ain't working. You know,
It's
we've
not working.
got to do better.
Absolutely. Well, all things grace. And so part of everything that you've mentioned today is there's just grace everywhere. Grace for yourself, grace for the cancer, right? You didn't fight it and curse it out and why me? And you had grace for it. And not only that, you reframe the cancer as something that is a partner with you, right? That is healing you, the chemo, right? Um, Grace for your friends, grace for the person who was like, I want to get out of here. Oh, because they think they're gonna die. You want to be with your dog. And as someone who recently got 2 dogs, I can tell you, husband, my dogs.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, so it's serious, right? I get it. And so I think about I just want to just acknowledge the grace that is through that that you've shared with us and blessed us with, just your presence and your story. But I want to leave us with the grace for us and for ourselves, but also matching that grace with an acknowledgement of our power, right? There's grace and there's power. So grace for me feels like this flow and this understanding of greater things, but there's this power piece where we can actually affect change through how we think and through how we communicate, through all of the things that you've mentioned, all these tools and resources. So I can say that I walk away changed and profoundly blessed by your presence today. And so thank you for sharing. And where can we find you? Please. I know there's a whole, I'll just put it all in the descriptions and in all of the things, but anything that you want to add right now where we can find you.
Sure. I think I'm going to leave your audience with a major question that I've asked so many people that I've interviewed. My space is the cancer space, or the cancer survival space. And I always ask them, if cancer had a message for you, what would that message be? And
Mm.
they're like, what are you talking about? It's a big bad wolf. I never thought of it as a teacher, or as someone who's shown me a light, or someone who's trying to direct me into a new direction. So I say to your listeners and viewers out there, anything in your life, replace the cancer with that and ask yourself that single question, and see if that question informs your decision-making process, your feeling process, your relational process with others. If everyone wants to find out more information about me, they can go to my website. Savio, S-A-V-I-O-P is my middle initial, Clemente, CLEMENTE.com. On there, I have a weekly newsletter where I talk about the head, heart, and gut, and I'm really honest about my own process with dealing with that. I also, if you know any cancer survivors, I also have a one-on-one coaching program information on there. Also, I'm experimenting with doing an online community on there. You can watch my TEDx talk on the website. On social media, I'm at The Human Resolve. So I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The Human Resolve. Yeah, those are where they can find me.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I would love to have you back for part 2.
Sure.
And you be well and you continue blessing and healing the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. I really appreciate it.
Hey everyone, this is Dr. Michelle Majors, and I hope you enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please hit the small bell to turn on your notifications and become a subscriber.